Well, hello and welcome to L&D Done Right, presented to you by CD2 Learning, a Nelnet company. On this podcast, what we're going to do is talk to some of the world's leading minds in learning and development. So you listeners, whether you're trying to impact the lives of your teams internally at your company, the communities you serve, or your clients as well, we hope you just learn from these people and the experiences that they have had along the way. Today's guest, I am super excited for you all to meet him. Myself and the company CD2 Learning that I work for have the pleasure of calling him a partner and being a partner in what he is doing over there at MindVue. So without further ado, Dr. Brian Davidson, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Super excited for today. I got to be honest. So I did a little bit of digging before coming into today's call. I spoke with Brittany and Scott before jumping on here today. And, I thought it'd be fun to share a little bit of a story that they told me that honestly is not a bad story. It's just a reflection of who you are and living out what you do at MindVue. So like I said, we've been able to work with you guys, a lot of content development work that we've been doing and a lot of timelines that we've agreed to continue to push the boundaries and continue to execute for you, right? And so we've had that pleasure. A recent story that was shared with me was the fact that, we were storyboarding and whiteboarding out this project together, getting towards that place where like, all right, it's time to execute and kick this thing off. Before leaving that meeting, that execution meeting, and agreeing to that timeline, you made a point to pause. And you said, hey guys, I am not worried about you executing within this time frame. I know how fast this is and what it's going to take to do this. So I just want to pause and say, hey, are you guys mentally going to be okay? Yeah. To me, that's just, who does that? Who takes the time to do that? I think that's a direct reflection of you and what you care about. And so I thought it'd be fun to share with the listeners today, that little nugget for everyone.
Gil, I appreciate you doing that. It takes me back a few years to that moment. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, you bet. Well, why don't we start off by telling the listeners a little bit about you and your story?
Yeah, Gil, I kind of describe to people that I'm an educator at heart. So I've created a company. I get labeled as an entrepreneur, but I really define myself as an educator. So I started off my career as a high school teacher up in the Twin Cities. And I had a background in psychology before I started to teach. And so I was so fascinated on what made my kids successful. And I was trying to figure out like what makes this one student, shine so well and what makes them thrive and do so well academically and in sports and all these different areas. And I started to realize, okay, a lot of these great students that I had, they were very self-motivated. They're intrinsically motivated. And then I also thought they also had a high level of self-discipline. So I was like, okay, how do those qualities develop in people? Like, where does that come from? So I came down to the University of Kansas, which brought me down to the Kansas City area here, and started a PhD program in counseling psychology. And I started to learn about all this stuff, like what makes highly successful people tick. And I started to learn about these factors like grit and resilience and growth mindset and self-efficacy. And with my background in education, I started to wonder, can you teach these things? Can you develop these factors and really cultivate these skills in people? Or are they like a fixed trait about who somebody is as a person? And so that started to, develop this light bulb moment for me where I said, this is what I want to do with my life and career, is develop some sort of organization that would figure out first, how do we measure these skills well? And then secondly, how do we build these skills to help people thrive and succeed?
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. I think it's something that's understated, right? Is that this stuff's hard. Yeah. It takes some of these things to be successful and not many people there's not an open area where people can talk about it.
Yep.
So did you find that you wanted to deliver that to people and give people the opportunity to say, hey, let's recognize that these are challenges?
Yep. Well, so Gil, initially, so I'll go back even further in that story. So I started with all this work with largely high school students, and we developed an initial version of the assessment back in 2012. And we found it was correlating and predicting academic performance really well. And then I could just see anecdotally with all these kids in school, those that were scoring better on a lot of these factors were just doing better in life and in school and in all areas of their life. And so then I started to think, okay, can we develop these skills? And then I developed this after school leadership program to see if we could actually foster these skills. And in this little program I developed, it was like we were seeing some positive evidence that kids going through some intervention, some training to cultivate these factors like resilience and grit and growth mindset. In the pre and post test assessment, we found that they were actually improving in these factors. And so that gave me great hope, right? That these things are not fixed and set in stone, but we can cultivate these skills. And so from there, it was like, okay, how can I build up more materials? And so I developed up this curriculum set, this 170-page curriculum set that I was working to help build these skills in more students across the country. Had a wonderful experience over in New Delhi, India, and was now serving about tens of thousands of students every single year. And I think this organization serves about 30,000 students every single year, working to help cultivate these skills in students over there. And that was a life-changing moment for me. And that was right about the same time that I met the great leaders and founders there at CD2 Learning. And when I was over there in India, again, I'm a small town guy from Iowa, right? And so I went over to India, a whole different world over there. And I started to realize, oh my goodness, like there are so many people in this world. Okay. And there's so many people who need help and support in developing many of these factors. And so then the question started to become, okay, how can you reach that group? So I was doing a lot of workshops and keynotes at that point in time, doing trainings with groups. And I started to think, okay, how can we reach the masses? How can we do that? And right at that time, that's when I had the wonderful privilege to meet CD2's founders, Rich and Dana Bartlett, who were just absolutely life-changing for me. And they gave me the understanding of how you could develop online materials, right, to then take this content that I developed and use it in a way that can then impact millions and millions of people across the world.
Wow. That's a story in itself. And I think that, obviously we're lucky to be here with you and to be a partner with you in that journey, because it is amazing work. And I think that that's a blessing for us and for you to be able to do this together. Right. But what I find so fun and interesting about what you do, so I'm going to butcher this. All right. But it's the Japanese word, is it Ikiji?
Ikigai. Yeah.
Dang it. I even Googled this before we got on here. I still butchered it. However, it means finding life's purpose.
Yeah.
Right. And it's something that you live by at MindVue and your actions and what you do to serve. Mm-hmm. So what I find so fun and what I'm listening to you tell your story is, not only do you live by that in your actions at the company, but you found that for yourself, right along that way. Tell me how you found that word and how you try and bring that into the learning that you deliver through MindVue.
Yeah. Well, so Ikigai. All right. Some people, I've done some trainings in the past where they said, "Is it Ikigai?" Because I don't know if my husband's going to be too excited, if I'm learning about this Ikigai, in this workshop. But
I'm gonna refrain from trying to say it anymore because I'll just continue to butcher it.
So it's a Japanese concept. So years back, National Geographic did this study looking at these pockets of the world called blue zones, where they were finding that people were living super long life expectancies. And one of these pockets that they found was in Okinawa, Japan. And when they started to study the people of Okinawa, they were finding, yes, they ate very healthy diets, right? Fish-based and a lot of plants and vegetables and whatnot. They were moving around quite a bit throughout their lives, but they noticed that they were also talking about Ikigai. And finally, the researchers were like, what is Ikigai? We don't have a direct translation for that. And these elders went on to describe, they said, it's basically your life's worth. It's your reason why you get up out of bed in the morning. It's your purpose. And they say that your Ikigai is found by finding the common answer to 4 key questions. The first of which is, what do you love to do? Secondly, what are you good at doing? Third, what does the world need out there? And then fourth, what can you do to earn a living, get paid, rewarded, or compensated for what it is that you can do? And if you can unite and find a common answer to those 4 key questions, that is your Ikigai. That is your sense of purpose. That is your why right there. And I feel like I've been so fortunate in my life to find and discover and really cultivate, not so much you just find a sense of purpose, but you cultivate this. What gives me a sense of purpose today is slightly different than what created a sense of purpose 15 years ago in my life. But I've been able to pursue this and do something that I absolutely love and enjoy.
Well, and what's so cool about it is, what are we talking about here today, right? What's learning and development in the corporate world for? It's to hone in on those four principles, right? Let's find your why, and let's figure out how do we take that into what you do every single day. What you're going to spend the most of your life doing is working. So it needs to follow Ikigai, right? And so it needs to follow within those four peers and pinnacles. So tell me, you met Rich and Denna Bartlett,
Mhm.
right? Again, blessing for all of us to be able to be sitting here today. What was that transition period? What was the moment you said, okay, we're in India, we need to take this to online? You meet Rich and Denna Bartlett. Walk us through the process of, vetting out the platform, and what did you do to get to where you're at today, to have MindVue and to be serving so many people around the world?
Well, a big part of that is you look at the people. Okay, so in addition to Rich and Denna, CD2's just got a wonderful array of amazing people that are helping out in this process. And you have to ask yourself, as somebody in my position, okay, what's going to help us actually accomplish this vision, this goal
Mhm.
of reaching millions and millions of people and helping cultivate these skills in as many people across the world as we possibly can. So then it was having some conversations with everybody there at CD2, and listen, this was not something that was just a 2-week decision. We're talking about years, okay,
Mhm.
in the making, before we got to that point where it's okay, we are set and ready to go. Now I think a lot of your other listeners are probably not going to be in that similar situation, but that's what it took, because a big part of what we had, Gil, was this assessment, and we knew
Sure.
that we had to get this assessment validated. And in order to get an assessment validated, it is so incredibly difficult to
Yeah.
do that. Literally, it took us years. So I initially developed that assessment in 2012. It wasn't until 2018
Wow.
that we'd gone through like the full psychometric, all the statistics, getting the thing to be psychometrically sound, meaning that's valid and reliable, and all the internal validity, all this nerd stuff, right? This stats stuff holds up. That it actually is when you're saying you're measuring grit and resilience, like, okay, you're actually capturing something there. It's not
Yeah.
just you're saying this, but there's some science and validity behind it all. So we had to get that assessment created first. And that was kind of step one in the process. And then from there, it was trying to figure out, okay, how can we then develop out all of this online solution, this digital learning, to get that done. So I developed that after school leadership program that turned into this big content book. So I had a lot of materials that were created, but we needed to get that into an online scalable format. And from there,
For people who are going to view this, why don't you do you have that book handy?
I do. Yeah. I've got it right.
Yeah, we're gonna post this online as well. So for the people watching, why don't we show how this
So
where
here,
this
here would
started?
be a little student booklet, and here would be the teacher's manual here, a good 170 pages of content and curriculum,
Yeah,
designed to help foster all these
as
factors.
as the person that's had to learn how to learn as a professional, a book that size would have given me anxiety back in the day, but now I think it's amazing.
Well, so it was then taking all those activities, and it was a combination of those materials plus all these workshops that I've done over the years, figuring out what works, right? When you're trying to develop grit and resilience and hope and people, what actually is showing to be beneficial, and then trying to figure out, okay, how can we take that experience that I've done in live circumstances, and then get it into some online format that somebody can do on a cell phone. Okay.
Yeah.
And let me tell you what, Gil, that is no easy task. Okay. Because now you're trying to create this live experience and replicate that in some way, shape, or form. And the great people at CD2, Cindy and Scott and Jeremy and Aldo and all those wonderful people, okay, they listened to all these ideas, and literally I would come up with like little graphics and stick figures of like, okay, here, this is what this could look like, right? And we'd have this back and forth process. And Gil, I absolutely loved, this process in the journey. Like, it was so fun, that creative. Oh, look at
Is
that.
that what you're talking about right there?
you came prepared. Yeah. So this is one of the activities. So this is an activity that we're trying to develop self-awareness in people. And, I was initially talking with the team. I said, I love this idea where we kind of have a person help identify all these different aspects of who we are. So it's not just we're an employee at MindVue or employee with
Yeah.
Nelnet or, I'm not just a dad, but there's many different components to who I am. And then I told the team, I was like, well, could we have like a flower bloom, and like all these petals are the different components of who we are. And it started there, right? And then by the end of the process, it turns into what you're seeing there on the other side, right? Of a human being. The pieces kind of fill into the human being as those aspects of our identity pop up, and all those attributes of who we are. So it kind of shows you where it starts, right? And then where it ultimately ends up in this iterative process, which is just so much fun. That creative process is something that I just absolutely love. But yeah, great example.
I thought you'd get a giggle out of that. When Scott sent that to me, and when we were taking a look at it, I got a chance to talk to Scott and Brittany about it, and there was a lot of laughs and just like reminiscence on the process and where we were at and where we're at today. It's beautiful.
Well, on my side, like I'd never done online learning before. Okay. I've clearly done stuff with teaching at KU and using Canvas and, a lot of technology along those lines, but had never developed online content like that.
Sure.
And so working with the CD2 team and figuring out, okay, how can we take this activity that I created and have done before and then get it to create something that can show up on a person's cell phone that they can do and interact with. What we didn't want was just simply like a sit and get passive learning experience, but we wanted to create activities where the learners would have to engage and manipulate aspects of the module or of the activity so that to enhance that engagement. Because, we just don't want to sit there and read something or just watch something. All those modalities are great, but we want them to interact and engage with that learning.
Well, I think that's an awesome opportunity to kind of reflect on some learnings of taking, you had this amazing assessment, right? We're going to now take that into an online learning environment. Mm-hmm. Then how do we take that assessment, put it into, now we know where the baseline is, and how are we going to educate and improve? What is that process for MindVue? I think that the way we've structured that and, assess, figure out where the baseline is, then, prescribe the right learning that is important to that specific individual learner within the system, and then constantly reevaluating, I think is just so important. So what did you learn along that process, and why is that the way you decided to go about doing it?
Well, because we realize everybody is different. The learner, the individual, they all have different things that are going on in their lives. This is something that we found with the assessment. When we initially developed this tool back when, again, 2012, 13, 14, at that stage in the game, I largely thought that these were factors that were kind of set in stone, or not set in stone, but like pretty stable. And like, Gil, you're just a person with great motivation and grit and resilience, and you're probably going to have that for the rest of your life. It's kind of like traits of an individual. Sure. But then we started to assess a lot of these highly accomplished, amazing individuals. And occasionally we'd see these scores that were much lower than what we'd anticipate. People you look at and be like, oh my goodness, like they are the epitome of grit and resilience, but yet they wouldn't score that way. And then we'd talk to those individuals after seeing those scores, and we would often find out that they were quite miserable, that they had stuff going on in their life, that, they were going through divorce or just got diagnosed with something, or were, really burn out in their work, or contemplating, should I stay in this job or should I leave? And so what we came to understand with regards to these skills is it's not so much, do you just have motivation and grit and resilience, but what we seem to be capturing is more of, what is this person thinking, feeling, and experiencing? Are they feeling motivated? Are they feeling gritty? Are they feeling resilient at this particular point in time? So once we started to realize that, then we realized, okay, this is really picking up on a snapshot of where somebody's at. So now we could use that information and assess them in a very proactive manner to see what's going on between the ears of this person, and then deliver up content to help them grow and develop in the areas where they need support. And so that's where we worked with the CD2 team, and we start with the process of the assessment. And then based off of those assessment results, the platform can then deliver up through machine learning appropriate modules that are unique to that individual, with the goal of developing the right skills at the right time for that person. And so it's really in education terms, we call this differentiated instruction. You're differentiating your learning based off of the needs of that learner. And so you're trying to meet the learner where they are at themselves. And so that's kind of the process of how we then deliver this content to individuals. Something that we have found, however, is there is good benefit to often working through this within a collective group as a team, because then you can talk about the ideas really well, right? And if you can have somebody that takes that learning almost as like a flipped learning model, where the person can go do the learning module on their own time, and then in a group context, it could be like a group coaching session or an educational environment, we can then discuss and talk about like Ikigai, for example, right? Get people to really analyze and think about, okay, what were my responses to all those 4 key questions there of Ikigai? And so again, this is what we've been working to develop and learn from and reiterate and continue to evolve. And again, just it's been amazing process.
So not just impacting and delivering content that is just out there for these certain areas, but prescribed to that specific individual's needs.
Absolutely.
To me, I think it hits. I mean, it's not just impacting performers or high performers or people who want to be motivated, but you're truly digging. It's bigger than that, right? You're digging into the happiness of the professionals. You're helping them to improve happiness in their own lives and in their careers. I think that's amazing.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, so we just recently did a dissertation study. We helped out use the assessment as part of a doctoral dissertation up at Drake University, looking at student athletes' happiness, and we found that many of these factors were predictive of a student athlete's level of happiness. And many of these things, like hope and grit and resilience, right? They tend to be buffers against a lot of that negative behavior psychopathology of an individual. And so from the wellness side, there's great benefits to working to develop these skills in people beyond just all the performance indicators and helping people succeed and thrive and perform well. But there's also the mental health component of all of this too, to help people really feel good in their life.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you know this, but I've got a brother who plays soccer at Drake University.
Is that right? Really?
So he better be at the tips of the scale of happiness, because he's got the best big brother ever. So definitely. Well, Brian, we could continue to talk all day. And I think that what you're doing for your people, the communities that you're serving, and frankly, the individuals within those communities down to the specific person, is so impactful. If you're speaking to another individual that's an entrepreneur, wants to do similar things to you and take what they're doing and is thinking, maybe an online presence or doing this through an online training environment is impactful. What did you learn along the way that you would share with them?
Well, number one, on the entrepreneur side, I'd tell people, go for it. Okay. We all have one life to live. And at the end of our lives, whenever that may come, hopefully, later than sooner, hopefully we can look back and say, I went for it. I went for it. And I pursued my goals rather than have all these regrets of what I did not do. And so that'd be kind of step number one, is I'd tell anybody, like, go for it. But when it comes to the learning side, the modules and all that, my recommendation would be to understand it takes a team. Okay. You cannot do it alone, but you need a great team that's got the instructional design side figured out, that's got the graphics design, who can create videos and materials, because you can't simply do all those things, right? In order to create something that's going to be of tremendous value, you really need a diverse set of strengths to be able to pull from, and that requires a team. And so you just can never do it alone. So whoever it could be, just try not to walk that path alone, but to find a group or organization that can help you accomplish those goals.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be CD2 learning. There's a lot of organizations out there looking to support, right? And so, but you can't do it alone. And to be able to improve grit, improve those metrics that are really important to you and the people that you're serving today, but even for you alone, right, is to maintain those things, making sure you're surrounding yourself with the individuals that are going to continue to improve and support you as well. Yeah, I think that's what we try and do every day with our clients, is we understand that this is what we do, right? The communities that you serve are going to continue to evolve over time. Same with the people taking MindVue's assessments, right? It's going to always continue to evolve. So you have to have a team around you that's going to make sure that those strategies are going to continue to evolve over time. And I think that that's such something that is unfortunately missing in today's world, is this interest to be a part of it and to be dedicated to it. And so I think you're exactly right. So I think that that's great advice for any entrepreneur, is no matter who it is, whether it's CD2 or whether it's the guy next door, find someone that's going to help you and get the job done and be there for you when you need them.
And quite honestly, it's a heck of a lot more fun, when you got a team around you.
We have had some fun, haven't we?
We have, absolutely. Years
absolutely. Of yeah, there you go. Well, one final question that I like to wrap up these interviews with.
Okay.
What books are you reading today that you'd recommend out to your community?
Well, my probably all-time favorite is Viktor Frankl, who's a Holocaust survivor, wrote a great book called Man's Search for Meaning. And when you talk about a sense of purpose in your life, I think this is a great way to really think through some of those deep questions, right? That gives you some meaning and purpose in your life. So that'd be one I'd recommend. Another one, you might be able to see it up above me here, is Grit by Angela Duckworth. So Angela is a pioneer in this field of positive psychology. She's the psychologist who developed this idea of grit, or really defined it, and about passion and perseverance for long-term goals. So she's really doing some innovative, amazing research and work, and continues to do so. Another one would be a great friend and colleague of mine, Mike Matthews at West Point. He's got a book called The Character Edge. Yeah. And this is about winning and leading with integrity. And that's something I think as leaders, we need to be thinking more about of how can we lead and ultimately win with integrity and tact. And so it's a great avenue to get leaders to think about that.
Okay. Well, there you go. I guess I'm gonna throw a curveball again real quick. I lied, not final question. If the listeners wanted to find you and introduce themselves to you, where can they find you at? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, good question, Gil. I get asked this a lot. So what I tell people is before you go get on your phone and spend more time on your phone, okay, first, spend some time with your loved ones. Okay. Take some time to be with your children, text your family members, your spouse, your parents, whoever it could be, and tell them how much you appreciate them. Okay. That's going to be a really important piece to mental wellness, and it'll help you accomplish that. So once that's done, okay, you can find more about MindVue on our website, mindvue.com, MindVue.com, MindVue.com. And I'm not a big social media guy myself. I do have a Facebook, but I don't think I've been on Facebook for a couple of years now. Twitter, I'm also not on. I do have a LinkedIn. However, I do probably spend most of my social media time on LinkedIn, so people can find me on LinkedIn. But listen, I think with social media, this is maybe getting off on a whole different tirade here, but I will not be surprised if we in 20 years from now look back on social media and see it much the same way as what we see cigarettes for my generation growing up, of like how detrimental it can be for individuals. So I think the less time we can spend on all that social media and spend more time interacting with real people in our lives and showing, what's real out there, and having that connection, I think will do wonders for people's mental health and wellness.
I love that. No better way to wrap up this discussion and tying into everything that we've talked about. So thank you for sharing that. A true testament to you. So everyone listening, thank you. This is your first ever client interview or spotlight interview guest speaker with Dr. Brian Davidson. Brian, thank you so much for speaking with us today. That concludes L&D Done Right, presented to you by CD2 Learning, a Nelnet company. Thank you so much. Listen again soon. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.